All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. Go ahead and get your questions on there, and we'll start getting them answered for you. So let's go ahead and get to our first question. And just real quick here, I saw there were some questions that were posted after the office hours yesterday. So Colin, Peter, if you're still on here, go ahead and repost your questions, and then I will start answering those. Generally, I start taking questions up to an hour before um, the office hour starts. So go ahead and get them posted on there, and we'll get them answered. So John F. looks like he's got quite a bit here. So he says, in reference to squatting, as you begin the backswing to use the ground forces, is it equally okay to end up in a squat position as you complete the backswing? Seemingly, you are then in the same position to utilize ground forces in downswing. And he goes on to say, sorry, misstated. In reference to squat, as you begin the downswing to use the ground forces, is it equally okay to end up in a squat position as you complete the backswing? Seemingly, you are then in the same position to utilize the ground force in the downswing. So that squatting, that's happening as you shift your weight. So in order to get into that squatting position that you're talking about, you would have to be shifting your weight completely in the backswing, which really isn't something that you can do. Now you start the momentum going forward, but you can't actually start getting that pressure into your lead foot until that very start of the downswing. So that's not really feasible. But let's talk that squatting thing that you're talking about. It's a very subtle thing. It's not like we're squatting down a foot into the ground. It's a very, very subtle thing. So typically what you're going to see in tour players is you're going to see their head lower 1 to 3 inches in the backswing, and then another 1 to 3 inches in the start of the downswing. Then they basically level out as their hands get to about waist level, and then they're pretty level as they get to the golf ball. Some tour players you're going to see they're going to raise up just a little bit as they get to the golf ball, like an inch typically. If they do raise up at all, most players don't. And then they don't really come all the way up until after that straight line release when they've released that club out in front. So basically it looks something like this, where I'm going up to the top of the swing. I'm lowering down a little bit, and that lowering is not coming from just squatting my legs in like this. The lowering is coming more from my side bend. So as I'm going up to the top, as I'm staying in my posture, I'm bending into my side. So that's basically doing this. It's side bend. So that's really where that lowering is coming from. And then that squat in the downswing comes when we get into our lead side. So that's why in that very start of the downswing, when our weight is shifting forward and we're getting that pressure into our lead side, that's why we're seeing them get a lot lower to this point, because that's when that squat is happening. So you can't really have that happening in the backswing, otherwise you're going to be in that kind of position. So we need to get to where, as we're going up to the top, we're staying in our posture, and that means our shoulder tilt is going down. We're going to have side bend into our lead side as we're going up to the top. The best way to kind of think about this, if you've read Hogan's 5 lessons, is he talks about that plane of glass. So he basically talks about this plane of glass that has a hole in it that your head goes through. It rests on your shoulders and then it goes straight down to the golf ball. So it's basically something like this. And the way he imagined it, which I think is a great way to imagine it, even though it's a little bit exaggerated, is that he imagined that his shoulders were rotating on that plane as he was going up to the top. So that's a little bit more exaggerated. That plane, that shoulder plane, isn't that steep, but it's generally a good feeling for a lot of people to have, because most people are way too level with their shoulders as they go up to the top. Most amateurs are actually probably standing up out of the backswing a little bit. So if you look at most amateurs, if you draw a line on top of their head from face on, you're going to see usually there's going to be a little bit of a raise up is typically what you're seeing. So those shoulders are leveling out, which means that shoulder plane, that shoulder tilt is going like that. So basically in the backswing, we want to get that shoulder tilt moving more down. You're going to feel more side bend into your lead side here. Side bend, that's mostly where that's coming from. A little bit of it is coming from pushing that backside out of the way, pushing it into, so imagine that there's a wall behind you and you're pushing that into a wall behind you. A little bit from that, because if I come up off, if I'm not pushing my hip back toward the wall here, my pant pocket here, if I'm not doing that, I'm going to tend to stand up, because if my hips are moving forward, I'm going to tend to want to stand up to stay in balance. Because if I don't, if I stay angled down and my hips are moving towards the ball, I'm going to basically fall on my face. Just like if I stayed on the wall and I was going backwards, I'd fall backwards, right? If I was standing up with my spine. So it comes from both of those, getting that side bend and pushing that hip back into the wall there. And that's going to allow you to stay in your posture and even get a little bit lower in the backswing. And then the downswing, that squat, comes from when we get that shift going forward. That comes from, we're here, and then we're shifting into our lead side, we're bending into our lead leg. That's when we get a little bit lower. See how I'm getting lower and I'm moving forward. And then from there, I've got that pressure into the ground and I rotate. I've got that flex in my leg here. So if we watch, I've got this flex in my leg here now as I'm coming down, and now I can push and straighten out my leg, which allows me to rotate my body open and get into this kind of position at contact and be able to release that club out front. So you can see I've gotten quite a bit lower here. Typically, anywhere from 3 to 6 inches, 2 to 6 inches lower is what you're going to see most tour players in the downswing. All right. So Jim G says, can you demonstrate what the elbows are doing at the start of the downswing, specifically in performing the move? So the elbows are basically, you're going to have that elbow kind of moving out. So the lead elbow is going to be moving in kind of that kind of motion. So if you imagine there's a laser pointing out of my elbow, and if I have my elbow pointed straight down to the ground here, that laser is going to be coming out of my elbow like that. So at the start of the downswing here, I'm going up to the top here, and depending on how vertical my swing is, if I have a very vertical swing, so if I'm like Bubba Watson, I'm way up here, my elbow is already pointed straight down. So in the downswing, he's got to really get that elbow to where it's really pointing out as he's coming out. He's got to really change that. Whereas, someone who's kind of flatter, like a Matt Kuchar, for example, maybe he's like this. His elbows are kind of already in that position. He doesn't really have to do a lot with his elbow to get it in the right position. Now, the trail elbow is kind of the same thing. It depends on your flexibility with your elbow. If you have a lot of flexibility in your shoulders, like for instance, you can do this 90-90 drill. So the 90-90 drill is basically where I go 90 degrees up from my shoulders, and then I create a 90-degree angle with my elbow here. And I try to rotate my elbow up, or my arm up like that. You can see that I can get my arm into a position that's a little bit more than my spine. I can rotate it back a little bit more than my spine angle there. So if you're someone who can only maybe go like that, you're going to need to probably fly that elbow. Clay, for instance, he has pretty poor shoulder mobility. I believe when he does that 90-90 test, he can only go to about right there with it. He can't go any further. So that's why you see in his golf swing, you see he actually has a flying elbow as he goes up to the top. But if you watch his elbow motion, he's really got to bring that trail elbow, because it's flying so much out here. He's got to really bring that elbow into his body when he's coming down. But if you're someone who can get into a position like this, like an Adam Scott, who's got very flexible shoulder, he's already got this elbow kind of pointing in the right position. It's just kind of coming down into the swing. So it really depends on the position with your trail elbow, where it's at in the swing. But no matter what, that elbow's got to come back into the body. If it stays out away from the body, this elbow kind of goes out like that. That's going to be an over-the-top motion. It's going to be coming down steep. So basically, we want to feel like the elbows. Another good feeling to have is almost like the elbows are coming together, feeling like that. So as you're coming down, and you don't want to feel like the elbows are coming together like this, right? We want to get those elbows coming. You want to get that trail elbow going toward the other elbow. And if you do that, that's going to help you to shallow out the club as well. So basically the move, just to go on to what the move is all about, the move is the shallowing of the club and the squaring of the face earlier. We can combine that into one move. You can separate those two, but the shallowing that has to happen in the transition, the squaring of the club face, that can happen at any point in the swing. It just has to be held until impact. So you can do it like Dustin Johnson, where he's like this at the top of the swing. You can do that. It's very difficult to do, but you can try to do that. But as long as it kind of stays that way as you're coming down, I see people all the time. They ask me, "Hey, can I square the face in the backswing, and then I'll be good to go?" It's like, yes, you can, but you have to hold that whole entire time. I see people that do the move or try to do this Dustin Johnson move, but in the downswing they do that and they come down steep. They just completely undo it. So you gotta maintain that. So that's why it's really difficult. I think the easiest way to do it for most people is to shallow out the club and square up the face basically at the same time. So it's basically there and then it's there. And that's how most tour players are doing it. They're shallowing the club and they're turning the handle down basically at the same time. And that's the tennis racket drill from the move course. So if you want to go work on the move course is to help you to stay in your posture. So if you're struggling with early extension, it might be because you're not shallowing out the club. If you're struggling with forward shaft lean, it's probably because of the way that you square the face, or it could be because you're not shallowing out the club. So it's to help you get some forward shaft lean, stay in your posture, get some good, de-loft the face at impact and get rid of the flipping a little bit. The move is a big part of that. So I'd recommend working through that course if you'd like to work on that. To get to the move course, all you got to do is go click the house icon at the top of the page there. That's going to take you to the home page. On the home page, if you scroll down, you'll see a list of all the courses on the website. Click the move course to get started on that if you'd like to do that. All right. So Kate W says, are there any thoughts I could engage my brain with to stop starting the downswing too fast and coming across the ball as a result? So you could tell yourself to kind of pause a little bit. What I'd recommend doing is just do the way you change anything is just to start out really slow with it, with a slow, fluid practice swing. Actually, I'd do some pauses first. So I would go up at the top, just do a practice swing where you go up to the top, pause at the top, maybe hold it for 5 seconds, and then swing, on plane what feels right to you in the downswing. Get comfortable with that, and then start doing it more in a fluid swing where you don't have the 5-second pause. You're just going up to the top, nice and slow, and then coming down, and then start speeding that up until you're at full speed with it. And then at that time, then you can try to add the golf ball and try to replicate that same thing there with the golf ball. There's not necessarily any thought to doing that. It's more about just teaching your body how to do it so that you're more comfortable with it. And if you do that, that's going to help you to get into a better position there and not cut across the ball. It could also be that you're not getting a proper weight shift. It's hard to say without seeing your swing, but a lot of times when you cut across the ball, that's from starting the swing entirely with the upper body. So you need to make sure that you're getting that good weight shift to your lead side. If you want a great drill to help you get a good weight shift, you want to work on what's called the step drill. And in the step drill, what you're doing is you're starting with your feet together. You're starting that backswing, and then you're stepping forward as you're starting that backswing, and then you're coming and you're getting that foot on the ground. It's forcing you to get that good weight shift to your lead side. To find that step drill, I'd highly recommend working on that step drill as well. To find that step drill, click the search button at the top right corner. You're going to see there's a search box there. Just search the word downswing. If you search the word downswing, I believe you'll find a video. I think it's the 4th video down. It's called How to Start the Downswing. The code of the video is BR014, and Clay goes over the step drill in that video. So I highly recommend checking that out. That's going to help you to get that proper weight shift, because that may be what's going on, as well as that you're just not completing or you're not getting that proper weight shift to your lead side. So you're not getting the lower body involved, and you're just swinging with all arms to start the downswing. What also could be happening is you maybe have a short backswing not getting a full shoulder turn. So a lot of times, if you don't get a full shoulder turn, you're somewhere in this area, you're going to start down quick and with the upper body and the downswing to try and get as much speed as possible. So if you get a bigger, fuller shoulder turn, you're going to feel like you have a lot more time to come down to the golf ball and be able to accelerate the club and get enough speed. So if that is the case, I'd recommend working on the power turn course, which you can get to the power turn course by clicking the house icon. And then on the homepage there, scroll down and you'll see the power turn course, if you scroll down to the list of all the courses. All right. So John F says, I was referencing a slight squat in the backswing to get in a position to hit up on the ball as a basketball player would do before he shoots a jump shot, as opposed to squatting once you are at the top of the backswing. Hope that clarifies. So yeah, it's the same thing. This is basically what you're doing in the start of the downswing. That's that player. I'm squatting down. That's happening in the start of the downswing. This is what all good players do, is they do that in the start. They don't go like this and then pop, because typically what you're going to do is you're just going to pop up and flip when you do that. And it's going to be hard for you to rotate. So you want to have the rotation of the body in the backswing, and you're going to be lowering a little bit, and that's coming from the side bend and pushing your hip back a little bit. So feeling like you're up against the wall here and you're pushing that hip back, that's basically where that's coming from. And then the side bend. So you're getting a little bit lower. And then in the downswing, when you get that weight shift to the lead side, that's when that squat is happening, is when we're getting here. That's that squat. That's in that lead leg. And that's the bending down to dunk the ball, right? That's happening right there. And then from there, now I'm jumping up, basically to dunk the ball is coming down from here to the golf ball. That's when you want that to happen. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that clarifies. But that's basically what you're wanting to do there. That's going to be the most efficient way to do it for sure. All right. So Jim G says, can you comment on learning a new technique? How do you go from focusing on the new move to the point where you have to think about it? Are there steps along the way, or just simply lots of reps? Yeah. So basically, the way that I equate it to, and if you've been on the office hours before, you probably heard me equate a lot of this motor learning type stuff to learning how to type, right? So when you first come upon, maybe your first keyboarding class, you've never really typed before, and you were learning how to type, the letters on the keyboard are completely random, and you don't know how to put your fingers on the keyboard yet, and you're just kind of pointing and pecking, and you have to look for every letter, and it's taking forever, and you're really slow, and you're probably making lots of mistakes along the way. And then eventually you get to where, okay, I know where every little letter is, or at least the most common ones. And then you start learning about where every single letter is, and you start to get faster and faster, even though you're still pointing and pecking and looking at the keyboard, but you're getting faster and faster and faster. And then eventually you get to where you learn how to put your fingers on the keyboard, and then you learn that every finger has a certain job, and you're getting better and better. Even though you're looking at the keyboard, you're getting faster and faster and faster and learning all these finger movements. And then eventually you get to where you don't have to look at the keyboard anymore. You can look at the screen and type, and you're getting faster and faster. And then you get to where instead of thinking in terms of individual letters that you're typing, you're thinking in terms of individual words. And then eventually you're thinking in terms of individual sentences instead of individual words. So imagine, I'm sure when you typed your question, you don't remember typing the L in learning or the Q in technique. You probably don't remember that because it was completely second nature. There was no really thought that went into it. It was just automatic. And imagine the amount of time and repetition that it took you, and going from slow to faster, doing, learning how to type. The amount of it took you a long time to do that. It didn't happen in a week, right? It takes a long time to make that happen. So I wish it worked out that I could just say, you know what, you need to shallow out the club, and then you would just go out to the range and just shallow out the club, and it would be perfect. It just doesn't work that way. You have to relearn. You have to change the way that you move your body in order to make that happen. You have to change what you're comfortable with. You have to get out of your comfort zone in order to make that happen. And basically, the way that process typically works is that you start out with really slow repetitions where you're pausing and getting into these positions. And I would just try to exaggerate these things as much as you possibly can. It's so much easier to over exaggerate something and have to ease off of it later than to just try to get there little by little by little. So if you're working on shallowing out the club, I wouldn't just try to if you're someone who's coming down steep all the time and you're working on trying to get this club in a perfectly shallow position, I wouldn't practice just getting this club in a perfectly shallow position. I would actually try to get it in a too shallow position, way too much. And then if you can actually get that in your swing, then all you have to do is ease off of that. It's so much easier to do that. So you start out with really slow practice swings where you are pausing at key checkpoints and exaggerating whatever position you're trying to be in at these key checkpoints. Once you get more comfortable with that, then you can start doing some slow, fluid practice swings where, again, you're trying to exaggerate these positions that you're trying to get into. And you try to go faster and faster. You literally go as slow as you have to go to be able to get into the positions, or exaggerated positions would be better, that you're trying to get into. Go as slow as you have to go to make that happen. If that's 10% speed, then that is what it is. It's probably something that's well out of your comfort zone. But if it's going to help you to hit the ball a lot better, then it's going to be totally worth it after you work on it for a while. So your goal after that is just to go to where you're going faster and faster and faster with it. Maybe you're at 10% speed the first time that you work on it. Your goal next time you work on it is just to get to where you're going faster than 10%. And you work that way up until you're at full speed with it. And once you're at full speed with it, you want to get to where you're at a point where if a golf ball was there, it would end up in a good result. Because a lot of times when we're working on things with a practice swing, because we're just focusing on the movement, things, if a golf ball was there, it probably wouldn't end in a good result. Because a lot of times, if we're working on shallowing out the club and we don't know how to square the club face as we come into contact, a lot of times when people are working on shallowing out the club and get forward shaft lean, they come into contact and their club face is just wide open. And that's because it's more comfortable for them to have their hands kind of in this position right here instead of turning that handle, which would be that, to square up the face. That's because it's different. So you have to get to where you're doing that in the swing, getting that club face squared up, getting that face shallowed out, or getting that club shallowed out, whatever it might be, whatever you might be working on, that's what it takes to do that. So get to where you're at full speed with it in a practice swing. And if you were to hit a ball, it would end up in a good result. So that means that you're coming into contact with a square club face. You're coming into contact with some normal speed. You're coming into contact on plane. The club is working down on plane. You're making ground. You're hitting the ground in the correct spot. You can even be hitting at a tee or a piece of paper or a leaf, a piece of lint, whatever you want, but not ready for the golf ball yet. Because a lot of times what we do is when the golf ball is there, we react to the golf ball being there and we try to hit a good shot. I mean, intuitively, we're going to want to do that. So if you're used to squaring the face by doing this, even if you shallow the club, you're still going to flip. So you've got to get that club face squaring up and get the movement down the right way before you move on to actually hitting the golf ball. And then once you're there, then you go and add the golf ball. And when you add the golf ball, there's going to be some things to work out. Most likely, you're probably not going to hit some very good shots in the beginning. And then once you start getting more comfortable with it, you're going to start hitting some better shots. But what you want to do is you want to pay attention to any kind of tendency that's going on. So a lot of times, maybe they're thin shots. Maybe it's toe strikes. Maybe it's chunk shots. And then you try to adjust your feeling. You try to get that movement down and then adjust your feeling to get the desired result that you want. So if you imagine this process, it's similar to what you did when you learned how to type. There was a lot of repetition and going slow and working things out in your brain, learning how to make these movements as you went along. And that's what it takes to make a swing change, a lot of swing changes. Now, some swing changes, it does not work that way. Some swing changes are very, very easy to make. So one of those would be making a bigger shoulder turn. And the reason why that is an easy change to make is because it's just an extension of what you're already doing. You're just taking what you're all. If you were doing this before, not a lot of shoulder turn, and then you were working on getting a bigger shoulder, it's doing the same thing. You're just going further. So it's not. There's not really a lot of, that's usually a fairly easy and quick thing to pick up. But changing like the move, for example, if you're working on the move, that's going to take a while. It's not something that's going to happen right away. And usually it's different with different people too. If you're already doing something fairly close to the move and you just need to go to get a little bit further with it to improve it, then it's not going to take you as long as somebody who's coming down like this and then going like that. It's going to take them a long time to get the move. That's just what it comes down to. So to look at that from this angle, if you're working on the move and you're coming down steep, meaning I got this club like this, and then I'm coming into contact by doing that, it's going to take you a long time to get the move because you're so far away from what the move is that it's going to be so far out. That's what you're comfortable with is that swing right there. So it's going to be way, way out of your comfort zone. It's going to take quite a bit of time to get there. Now, this does not mean that you cannot go and play golf and play good golf while you're working on these things. It just means when you are playing golf and working through these things, you want to separate your practice tee from the first tee. So just go out, when you go out and play golf, just go out and play with the swing that you're confident in, even if that's flipping and coming down steep or whatever it might be. And whatever you work on in your practice just has to subconsciously make its way into your swing on the course. So when you're practicing, really try to focus on getting in those right positions. But then when you go out on the course, just go out there with the swing that you're comfortable with and whatever subconsciously is making it. Because so as you get more comfortable with the positions, subconsciously those positions are going to make their way into your swing little by little by little as you work on it. So in making these kinds of swing changes, they're not for everybody. You probably, when you were learning how to type, you probably felt like you wanted to quit, and didn't care about learning how to type. I still know several people that point and peck when they're typing. They don't really know how to type because they gave up on it. And that may be the way that you are with your golf game. If it's not that important to you to get into these kind of positions and to take your game to the next level, there are other ways to do it. You can just work on speed. You can play great golf and flip the club. It's just going to be a lot more difficult, and you're going to have a disadvantage to anyone who is really compressing the ball and is at the same level as you. It's just going to be hard to get to that next level. So there are ways to do it, but basically there are 3 tiers to improving. There's your ball striking ability. So that's just taking whatever you're doing with your technique and improving your awareness of the center of the face, your face angle, your strike location, your path, your club path coming in, your ground contact. You can flip the club and improve your awareness of all those things, and you will get better. And that's basically what our ball striking masterclass is. And we'll be offering that, every month or 2, opportunities to enroll, and you can go through that. There's basically no technique involved in that course. It's just about improving your awareness. Now, your technique, which is the second piece, is what helps you to be in those better positions. So if I have terrible spine angles, I can improve my awareness of my contact, but it's just going to make it more difficult for me to get in those positions. I'm going to be less consistent. So working on the Top Speed Golf system as well as the move are things to help you with improving your technique. And then the last thing is just to work on your speed, to get your speed up. And again, that there's some technique involved with that as well. You're going to be working on improving your range of motion. You're going to be working on improving your sequencing. You're going to be working on neural adaptation, which is just getting used to swinging more, with more speed and generating and recruiting the right muscles and things of that nature to do that. That's what it comes down to. So basically, you want to look at your game and see what's what you want to work on. But I think that a lot of people focus a little bit too much on the technique aspect of their swing, and they don't focus on the things, because really impact is the most important thing. Technique is really, really important, don't get me wrong, but it shouldn't deserve all of the focus. A lot of people just some people have great technique and they just have horrible awareness of their contact. I've had lots of students, they send me their swing, and I was like, hey, your swing looks pretty good. You're putting yourself in position to be able to hit the ball well. It's just the fact that you don't have very good awareness of your contact, and you need to improve your awareness and your ability, basically your skill level of being able to do that. I mean, how many people are at your club that you see have terrible golf swings but hit the ball on the money all the time? Those people have great awareness and good skill level and understand how to get this club to do what they want to do. And how many people at your club have great swings but really don't have any kind of awareness? So they're kind of lacking in those areas. So that's why I kind of look at and evaluate what's going on in your game. And if you do that, you can figure out what you need to do to help the most. But if you've kind of worked on your awareness of impact, and that's about as good as it gets, which it can always be better. And then you've worked on your speed, then maybe the next step for you is to work on your technique and the harder parts of technique to get to where you want to go. So that'd be the move is definitely one of the most difficult things to get down. All right, so let's continue with the questions here. All right, so Nicholas D says, TSG sent a recent email with a good video showing the angle of the shoulders moving from the top of the downswing through impact. I believe my shoulders are too level at impact. Can you discuss the alignment of the shoulders and spine angle through impact? So I just talked about that a little bit earlier. Basically, you don't want your shoulders to be level. Typically, if your shoulders are level, it means that you're flipping through contact because you're coming in and you have to stand up and you're coming through like that. And what you're typically going to see is as you're coming through, you want to see that shoulder angle to be steeper in the downswing. So if you'd like to work on a drill to help you with your shoulder angles, I'd recommend the shoulder to shoulder drill. So basically at the top of the swing here at the address, we're going to have a little bit of flex in our legs, and we're going to be bent over at the waist a little bit. And we're going to have our hands roughly about 4 or 5 inches in front of our legs. That's where we're going to be here. And then as we go up to the top, we're going to be rotating as we go up to the top and maintaining our spine angle. So we might even be getting a little bit steeper with it, just a little bit. Like I said, a tour player is going to be lowering their head about 1 to 3 inches in the backswing. So that's going to put their shoulders at a little bit of a steeper angle as they go up to the top. And then in the downswing, they get even lower, and the shoulder angles get a little bit steeper here as we're coming down, more in this area. Now at contact, it's going to look more like this, but as they come through and the hands are getting in front of the chest here, that's when you'll see the shoulder angles are in a steeper position, and then you go through into the full finish. So if you want to work on a great drill for that, the shoulder to shoulder drill is a great drill. It's 4 irons, but it's for every club. He shows it with an iron in the drill, but it's really for every club, and that's to help you stay in your posture as you're going back. So as far as the shoulder drill is concerned, what you're doing is you're taking a towel, so a big towel like a bath towel or a beach towel or a big golf towel or something like that. Basically, something that's about 2 feet wide is what you want. And then for irons, you would place it about the edge of the towel, about 2 feet on the other side of the golf ball. And what you do is you'll get in your alignment here, put the club across the shoulders. And as you go up to the top, this butt end of the club is tracing that top layer or that top edge of the towel. And then in the downswing, this other butt end of the club is tracing the lower edge of the towel because I'm steeper with my shoulders in the downswing. And then you go through into the full finish. And that's going to help you understand kind of the feelings that you're going to have as you're going back and forth. So some good feelings that you'll have, like I talked about earlier, is in the backswing, with your right pant pocket here, you're pushing that up against the wall. So if I'm trying to get this steeper shoulder angle, if my hips are moving away from where they were, then I have to stand up to stay on balance, and look where my shoulders end up. They end up level. So we need to be pushing that hip back, almost like if you're standing up against a wall here, you're pushing back up against the wall with your right pant pocket. And then the downswing, we need to be doing the same thing. We need to be pushing this pant pocket into the wall on the other side. So that's one of the first feelings. The other feeling is side bend. So if I'm just turning like this and I'm kind of just standing up and not getting side bend here, then I'm not going to be able to stay in my posture and get that steep shoulder swing. So you need to feel like in the backswing that you're crunching into your side here as you're going up to the top. So I'm bending into my side here, and then the downswing, it's the same thing. I'm bending even more into my side. So that's this. I'm crunching into my side here as I'm coming through contact, and that allows me to get even lower and get that shoulder steeper at a steeper angle as I'm coming through. So check out that shoulder to shoulder drill. It's a very good drill to work on. You can get to that shoulder to shoulder drill by clicking the go into the top of the page there, and you'll see where it says search this website. If you go in there and you search the words shoulder to shoulder, 3 words, and you'll find that drill. It's a great drill. I'm not sure exactly what video you're talking about, but I know that's a great drill for working on the shoulder movement. And if you want to work on it with the driver, I've just moved the towel another 2 feet beyond, because your shoulders aren't going to be as steep with the driver because it's a longer club. You stand a little bit more upright. So if you look at the difference here, this is actually a long iron. This is a 3 iron. And you can see how much longer the driver is, right? So with my iron stance, basically I'm like this. I'm a little bent in the knees. I'm a little bit bent over at the waist. My arms are basically hanging straight down, and my hands are roughly 4 or 5 inches away from my legs. This is basically your standard setup position with the iron. But with the driver, because it's so much longer, if I was in that kind of position, I would basically be like that. So I need to stand a little bit more. It's basically the same bend in the knees. I stand a little bit more upright, just a little bit more. So this would be an iron, and then this would be a driver, just a little bit more upright. And because I'm a little bit more upright, I'm going to reach out just a little bit instead of having my arms hang straight down, when I was bent over at the waist a little bit more. Because I'm more upright, I'm going to have to reach out for the club just a little bit. So I'm going to be more in this kind of position right here. So that would be like your standard with the driver. And because of that, because I'm a little bit more upright, that takes my shoulders and makes it a little bit more level. So if you're doing it with a driver, you can just take that towel and just move it another 2 feet. Basically, you can pivot off of the edge. So if you have the towel like this, you can just take it and flip it over like that. And now this is your top edge and this is your bottom edge. So that can help you to work on that drill as well. So highly recommend that drill. That's a good one to help you stay in your posture for sure. All right. So Charles L says, can you give me any tips on playing in a sand bunker with wet compacted sand? So yeah, you use the same way. The only difference is that you're going to take less sand, and you might even choke up on the club a little bit to give you some control, but you're going to take less sand when you do that, because what happens is when the sand gets wet and compacted, this club is going to want to hit it and then come back out of it. So typically when you do a bunker shot, you're opening up the face about 45 degrees. So that would be 0, right? That's perfectly square. If I open up the face, as you can see here, I'm not doing this with my hands. I'm moving the grip in my hands, right? So I'm holding it like that, and the face is about 45 degrees open. So that's what you typically do, and then you're typically hitting anywhere from 4 to 6 inches behind the golf ball, right? And the bounce is going to allow that club to glide through the sand. That's if you're in normal sand. But if you're in wet and compacted sand, if you do that club, the bounce is going to hit that sand, and it's going to kind of bounce off there. And you're going to end up sculling a lot of those shots, because it's going to come into the sand, that's going to bounce out of the sand, and then the ball is going to be right there, and you're going to hit it with the leading edge. So basically, the fix for that is to hit closer to the golf ball. So instead of hitting 4 to 6 inches behind the golf ball, you would hit about 2, maybe 3 inches behind the golf ball, depending on how wet and compact it is. And to get a good feeling for that, what you can do is actually, when you get into the sand, you can kind of dig your feet in. So that does a couple things. It helps, because sand is typically kind of slick. So if you kind of dig into it, you see a lot of tour players, if you watch them on TV, they'll do this. when they get in the sand. They'll really dig their feet in. And there's a couple of reasons why they do that. One, they're getting a feel for the sand. They're feeling like how fluffy it is and or how compact or hard it is. And then the other thing that they're doing is they're stabilizing themselves, because a lot of times footing is difficult in a bunker because it's sand. It can be a little bit slip. So digging your feet in gets things a little bit more, to where you're a little bit more stable. So get a good feeling for that. And this just comes with practice, knowing how compact or fluffy sand is. It just comes with practice and doing that over and over and getting a feeling for what adjustments you have to make based on how hard or fluffy you feel with the sand. So that's what I do. You playing the shot the same way. You still have the face really open. It's just that instead of hitting 4 to 6 inches behind the golf ball, you hit 2 to 3 inches behind the golf ball. Now, if you're still bouncing out of the sand, then all you would do at that point is, instead of opening the club about 45 degrees, open it up 30 degrees. Because what that will do is that will allow the club to dig just a little bit, or not to glide as much as it was before. That allow the club to dig just a little bit and get underneath the ball and coming out. So like I said, it just comes with practice. And if you want to go practice these shots, hopefully you have an area where you can go to your course and do this. But hopefully you have like a practice area. And if it's not wet outside, bring a bucket of water or something, a water bottle, and pour it all over a portion of the sand, and hit some wet sand bunker shots out of there, and get a feeling for how that, for what happens there. And that's going to help you to get a feeling for, what you need to do when it's wet. So basically you play a wet sand or a bunker shot the same way you would a normal one. Open up the face, and you want to make sure that you're swinging hard at it. Now, you're not going to need to swing as hard with a wet sand bunker shot because you're not taking as much sand. So keep that in mind as well. But you just take less sand, and if it's still bouncing off of there, and I would also make sure that you're actually hitting the sand where you think you are, because you may think that you're hitting 2 or 3 inches behind the golf ball, but you're actually hitting 6 inches behind the golf ball. And then if you do that and you just close the face, you're just going to stick the club in the sand. So make sure that you're actually hitting the sand where you think you are. The easy way to do that is just to put a line in the sand where the ball is, and that's going to help you to be able to understand where you're coming into the sand. Or you can put a line in the sand 2 to 3 inches behind the ball and see where you're hitting in relationship to that line. But if you are hitting 2 or 3 inches behind the ball and it's still bouncing up like it's like concrete, because that does happen sometimes. Sometimes the bunkers end up super hard and like concrete, and hitting out of them, the club just bounces off them. If that's the case, then you'll want to just close the face just a little bit. So go, instead of having the face 45 degrees open, have it about 30 degrees open, and let the club dig just a little bit to get underneath it. And if that still doesn't work, then do it a little bit, have it open a little bit less, and just get to where, you're, even if it's basically concrete, you're still going to, if you're hitting behind the ball with any kind of leading edge, it's still going to get underneath there. You just don't want it to be so far behind the ball that the club gets stuck in the sand. So that's what I'd recommend doing, but you don't want to have so much bounce on it that it bounces off the sand either. So you got to find that happy medium, and it just comes with practice. You just got to go practice that at your range. It's not something typically that you're going to go up. I'm just going to be able to tell you what you need to do, and then you're going to be able to go out in your next round and execute it perfectly. You got to go practice it to get a real good feel for it. And then once you get a real good feel for it, then you can get the results probably that you're looking for. All right. And then Charles Ells asks about plugged lie. So one, if you're in a plugged lie, the sand can't be that hard. So typically, if you're in wet sand, the good part is that the ball usually sits up. You're rarely going to get a plugged lie. In fact, I don't think I've ever gotten a plugged lie when it's actually been wet sand, because the ball just kind of comes up out of there. It's usually only fluffy sand when you get plugged lie. But if you get a plugged lie, that's when you don't want to open up the face, because what opening the face does is it exposes the bounce and allows the club to glide through there. So it's almost like if you think about a jet ski, or not jet ski, a skier on water, right? They have the skis on the water, it's gliding on top of the water. Well, if you took the front end of that ski and you dug it down into the water, it's just going to shoot down into the water. That's the same thing that's happening with this club. If you open this face, it's like the ski on top of the water, and it's going to glide through the sand and get underneath the ball and pop it out. But if you get that leading edge in there, it's going to dive into the sand. So if you have a plugged lie, you can't have the club gliding on the sand, because it will end up hitting it with the leading edge, and you're just going to blade it out of there. So you actually have to hit it more. You have to actually basically have the face closed, and use a high lofted wedge, the highest one you have, probably like a 60 degree or something like that, and square up the face, and then hit directly behind the golf ball, and that will pop the ball out of there. And you need to get this club in the ground just behind the golf ball so that it can dig into the sand and then pop it out. That's basically how you hit out of a plugged lie. So if you're ever in a plugged lie fried egg situation, that's what you got to do, is you got to get that leading edge into the sand a little bit so that it can get underneath the golf ball. And don't get me wrong, these shots are going to be hard. They're probably not going to have any spin on it. It's probably going to come out like a rocket. So aim at kind of the fat part of the green whenever you have that. If you have a lip in front of you, it's probably going to come out low. So, you may need to not hit it on the green. You may need to just hit it out into the fairway so you can hit it on again. So it really just depends on, the situation. But understand that ball is going to come out low, and it's probably going to come out hot. So kind of do that accordingly. And again, this is something you got to go practice. It's not something you can just go and, I can just tell you what to do, and you're going to go out to the course and you're going to do it perfectly. If you do, it's going to be pure luck. But it's not usually something that you're going to go out and you're going to execute perfectly the first time that you try it. You got to go to the range or go to the practice area at wherever you play and practice this and get a better feel for it. And once you get that, then you'll be in better shape. So hopefully that helps with your bunker game, Charles, and start playing some better golf. Hopefully you don't hit it in the bunkers too much. That'd be good too. So we got another 10 minutes or so left. So go ahead and keep your questions coming, and I will continue to answer them. And then ball position in your stance for a plugged lie. It's going to be basically the middle of your stance is to a little bit forward in your stance. That's basically where it's going to be. So middle to slightly forward. So basically, just to boil it down, middle of your stance. Try it there, see how that feels, and then a ball forward in your stance. If that doesn't quite work right, just work somewhere. It's going to be somewhere in that area too. The middle to a ball forward of that. So like I said, we got about 10 minutes left. Go ahead and post your questions on there. So Nicholas D says, how do you and the pros keep their club heads so pristine? So first of all, it's buying quality clubs is a part of it. If you buy really cheap, poorly made clubs, it's going to be hard to keep them fairly nice. So I like Titleist clubs. I have all Ping clubs right now. Clay is a Ping ambassador, so I had the opportunity to get a new set of Ping clubs, and they're very, very high quality clubs as well. But these are Titleist clubs. I got these in college, 2007, and I played these up until just recently, until I got last year. I got all my Ping clubs. But I played these irons for over 10 years, and I mean, they've definitely got some dings and things on there. But it's just first things first is just to buy a quality made club. So I think Titleist makes quality clubs. There's a lot of great companies out there that make quality clubs. Ping makes very good quality clubs. Ping probably has the best engineering on their clubs out there, I think, which is part of what drew me to them. TaylorMade, most of their clubs are very high quality. I believe that Mizuno makes very high quality clubs. Callaway, most of their clubs. And you notice I'm saying most of their clubs because they put out some crappy quality clubs too. TaylorMade and Callaway do. They definitely make some crappy quality clubs, but they also make some high quality clubs too. So the main thing is just buying some quality clubs from a quality company. So like I said, Titleist, Ping, most TaylorMade, most Callaway. Basically, any of the major brands. If it's something that you're buying in like a major department store like Walmart or Target or something like that, it's probably not high quality and it's not going to withstand the test of time. Now, those are great sets for folks that are probably just getting into golf and they're not sure if they want to play or not, and they don't know if they want to invest a lot of money or not. But and even if you're in that situation, I would recommend that you buy a set of quality clubs that are maybe second hand. So maybe going to Play It Again Sports or one of the golf stores and buying, or online and buying a set of used clubs that are from a quality manufacturer. But that's the first thing that's going to allow them to hold up. And then the next thing is just keeping them clean. So I play with a vast range of handicaps. Whenever I play with people, I got buddies that are 30 some handicaps, and I got buddies that are I play with Clay a lot of times. He's a +3 handicap. So when that you see how people take care of their clubs. So it's a matter of after every shot, if there's any dirt on my club, I brush it off and I wipe it off, and it's clean after I hit it. But I see a lot of people out there, they have dirt caked all over their clubs and things of that nature. The other thing is that if you're hitting the ball in the fairway, you're typically hitting out of a good lie. If you're hitting it all in these precarious places, there could be rocks underneath your ball or things like that can hurt your clubs. So that could be what's going on as well. But the main thing is there's two main things. So one is just buy a high quality club from a high quality company. It's going to be made out of high quality materials. And then two is just basically after every shot, just make sure that all the grooves are cleaned on it. And that's going to allow you to play better golf too. Because if you have mud all over your face or dirt all over your face, the ball is not going to spin the same way. So, it's going to be inconsistent. So get those grooves cleaned on there, have everything nice and clean so that your strikes are more consistent and your clubs last a long time. If you do that, I can still be playing these clubs right now if I wanted to. They're great clubs. So, I could probably play these for another 10 years or even more. It's just a matter of I just wanted new ones. And I had the opportunity to get some new ones. So yeah, it's just about keeping them clean, buying quality clubs, and you'll be able to have them in a nice, pristine condition. So James C says, back to sand lie and club face open 45 degrees. Don't you need to aim that much more to the left? So basically you aim in the direction, you're going to be swinging the club in the direction of the face. So if you have your face open, right, you're swinging a lot in the direction of the face. So if I have this face open like that, I'm swinging very, very shallow and into out essentially when I'm coming into the ball. So again, it's just going to come down to a practice of knowing where exactly you need to aim. But typically the face is going to be pointing a little bit to the right of your target because you're not going to be able to swing 45 degrees into out, right? So your face, you're typically going to be hitting the ball's actually going to come out a little bit, if you're right-handed, a little bit left of what the face is. It just comes down to feel and understanding, going out and working on that. But your feet are going to be aimed typically left of your target and more toward your face is going to be more toward the target, but it's going to be somewhere in between there. And it's just a matter of going out and practicing the. That's why I find it interesting. I get a lot of questions about the bunker game, and I think it's because no one really practices the bunker game, and they're just wanting to take things out to the course. So actually go out there and practice these things. If you go out, that's basically how I learned to be a decent bunker player, because I actually was a terrible bunker player in college, because the course that I grew up on in high school had one bunker on it, and you would basically never go into it. It was basically just there for show, essentially. So I basically didn't know how to hit the ball out of the sand, and never really practiced it because I didn't think it was necessary, because I never went into the bunker. I maybe went into the bunker once or twice a year, and as a kid, I played hundreds of rounds, probably over 100 rounds in a year for sure. So when I went off to college and started hitting in bunkers, I was terrible and had to learn how to hit out of bunkers. So basically, I had a lot of practice hitting out of bunkers, and still try to avoid them like the plague, but it comes down to going out there and practicing these things. So I went out there and I practiced ball positions. I practiced opening the face and closing the face. I practiced hitting behind the ball a foot and hitting behind the ball 2 inches and everything in between. I practiced having the face open as much as I possibly could and having the club face closed. And I found, what works best. So typically, and I practice, where the ball comes out. And typically it comes out somewhere between where your feet are pointing and where the club face is pointing. And that's basically, you got to go out and get a feel for that when you practice that. So the easiest way to think about with the bunker game is to go out, have that club face open 45 degrees. That's essential. If it's too close, it's going to dig in normal sand. If you're playing in sand that's really hard and packed, which we get that all the time, people comment on our bunker videos and say, that's great, but I don't play on really nice golf courses like you do. But it's the same for those bunkers. It's just you may just need to hit a little bit closer to the golf ball. So that's what it comes down to. You just got to go out and practice it and see, okay, when I hit 4 inches behind the golf ball with the face 45 degrees open, it ends up in a good result. If I have the face 10 degrees open, I end up sculling it way over the green, or the club digs into the sand and the ball doesn't go anywhere. So you just got to go out there and vary what you're doing to see what works best for the conditions that you're in. But typically 45-degree open face, and swinging, hitting 4 to 6 inches behind the golf ball, and making sure that you are accelerating through the ball, taking a full swing through the ball. Because that's the next thing that people struggle with, is that because it's completely normal too, because you're seeing a target that's only 15 yards away from you, but you're taking a swing that feels like to you that you would hit the ball 70 yards. So it's completely understandable to have that feeling, but understand that you're hitting the sand, and the sand is kind of bringing the ball out of the bunker. So it takes getting comfortable with that and understanding, okay, I need to swing hard, and that's how far the ball is going to go if I hit the sand at this particular position. So if you do that, you'll be able to get a long way with it. So that's what I recommend doing. Go out there and practice it. Vary what you're doing. Vary how much you open the face. Vary how much you hit behind the golf ball, and see what works the best in the conditions that you're in. Vary your ball position. See what works best for the conditions that you're in. Typically, the middle to a little bit forward of the middle is a good place to be. And then come up with a system for the way that you open the face. Because if you open the face less, then it's going to be more in the direction of your club face. Whereas if you open the face more, it's not going to be as much in the direction of your club face, because you're glancing the ball a little bit more. So there's no hard and set stone way. It's just something you're going to have to go out and see for yourself where you'll be able to do that. So thanks everybody for joining me. It's 10 a.m. right now. It looks like we got one more question here. So Matthew J says, where is the player information profile located? This was mentioned in the opening drive, your journey section. So you don't actually have access to the information, or there's no profile located anywhere that you can get to. Mainly, you just take the you take a profile quiz kind of thing, and then that tells us what you're struggling with, and then we make a recommendation on where you should start. If you want to change that, all you have to do is go through the opening drive again if you want to change that information. But I will tell you, really, that information that you're getting, we're just telling you. Basically, you're asking us if you want consistency or distance, and if you're wanting distance, we put you in the direction of the 20-minute distance fix. And if you're looking for consistency, then we put you in the direction of the stable fluid spine course, because that's really the biggest piece to consistency. So it really just depends on what you're looking for there. But we don't have a page where it has all your player information located on there. It's just something that we use to help you figure out where the best place to start is. All right, so thanks everybody for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow, Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. And again, you can post your questions up to an hour before. That's when I start. Those are the questions that I start answering first. So go ahead and get your questions posted on there tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern time or after, and those will be the first questions I start with. So everybody have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk to you next time.